Hello everyone. In this workshop, I'll be demonstrating ways to develop and foster community through collaborative prompts and activities in the classroom with the application Figma Design. Using shareable and ready-made components and in-context instruction, I'll explain how Figma can be used as a workspace to document, share, and showcase design work and process. I will walk you through some best practices, show some examples from previous classes, and demonstrate how to build towards a single collective output while working in the same document with others. My name is Miguel Cardona. I'm an assistant professor in the New Media Design program at the College of Art and Design at the Rochester Institute of Technology. New Media is an interdisciplinary BFA program started around 1999. We have 158 undergraduate students and service 140 freshmen and sophomores from other external majors such as interactive development, human-centered computing, digital humanities, and web and mobile computing. I began to use Figma Design in the classroom in the fall of 2018. What started as a tool to prototype web and app designs quickly became my go-to tool for in-class collaboration. One of the best things about Figma is that there's almost no barrier to entry. I didn't have to work with the university IT staff for installs. Students are able to sign up with the university emails and work right in the browser. Figma grants professional features for all educational users for absolutely free. Just go to figma.com/education and you can verify your educational status. Be sure to sign up for a free account before attempting to sign up for the educational status. If you've used other design programs before, it'll feel familiar. It is a design tool first and foremost, a powerful one whose features are crafted with the designer in mind. Figma has vector path tools that are familiar but also very forgiving. The first time I started using Figma, I found my way around by making things I would make in other applications. As you can see here, I'm making a simple map icon using shapes, as well as subtraction, pathfinding tools. I can color it and add a gradient as well. Figma does improve on the tools. Here I am demonstrating the power of vector networks while making paths. Vector networks give you the ability to make more complex paths with multiple endpoints. You can also work with imagery and photography in a very intuitive way. Here I am selecting images and placing them into shape objects. So once the images load up, I can click on the various rectangle objects. I can resize, and the resizing allows the image to work appropriately within the image as it scales. You can also make minor adjustments to images such as exposure, contrast, and saturation. So click on the image. You'll see sliders for exposure, contrast, saturation, and temperature. I can also control properties of the shape that contains the image by adjusting the rounded corners here. Figma is all about collaboration and allows many people to work in a document at the same time, up to 50. I have worked with students on collaborative projects creating designs and illustrations. Here is an example of an illustrative design system made with students for a research project. Using the same constraints like colors and angles, we made an entire library of vector illustrations to be used in a mobile app that we developed. You can see here, I can view the outline mode. I can click on any given shape, move it around, and see its path points. The shareable aspect of Figma also makes it ideal for demonstrating design process. This is a file I put together to demonstrate how a grid can be constructed for a 1920 by 1080 presentation layout. I created a series of steps and sections to help demonstrate to the students exactly how it is broken down. I've easily shared this with my students, and they have had copies for themselves to learn and iterate upon. Here I'm demonstrating all the different ways that the grids can be viewed, used. I'm breaking up the space, showing various examples of the grid being used to apply both gutters and flush layouts. And here applying real text and image blocks. Here's a presentation made with a group of students for another research project. We needed to put together a presentation for our industry partner. Instead of passing around a Keynote file, we worked both synchronously and asynchronously within the same document, and were even able to present from the Figma file itself. Since going remote in April due to COVID-19, I needed to keep my students engaged while working online. Activities that I would typically run in the classroom with a whiteboard is now done over Zoom within a collaborative Figma document. Here I am running a COVID-19 themed user-driven interaction activity with my class. I sped up the video just so you can see how this works in non-real time. I made a series of chat components. You can see the various arrows. Those are the students as they're following along. For this, I made those reusable design components to act as a chat visual, giving students a way to present themselves virtually in the design application. As we worked through the design process, I asked questions, had them make assumptions, and began to work through UX process. And were able to do so as a group, virtually, speaking over Zoom, but working virtually in Figma. On April Fool's Day, Figma deemed it April Fun Day and swapped the multiplayer cursors for foods, tools, and pets. I used the opportunity to have a dance party with my students over Zoom. They really got a kick out of it. My examples can feel a little overwhelming, but as always, start simple and work with what you feel comfortable with. On the first day of class, I have an icebreaker activity that introduces students to the Figma application and gives them the opportunity to know each other as well. For this, I've made a Figma community file. Figma has a community beta where you can make your files available for others to duplicate and iterate upon. For the workshop today, you can go to my Figma community file or my Figma community account at figma.com/@MIGGI and click on my Auto Layout Icebreakers activity. In it, I have examples and the steps that I'll be walking you through today. This is what one of the icebreaker profiles look like. It has my name, a little bio, as well as some of my faves. You can feel free to customize it as you see fit. We're going to begin this workshop by getting a little bit of an introduction to the Figma workspace, as well as working with frames and some of the features that are unique to Figma. Create a new draft. So I'm going to create this new file. So the main things that you want to be concerned with is kind of like your main art area. Over here are going to be your layers and your assets. Right here is the main menu with everything that you can need to access. Over here on the right hand side is the properties menu. When you have and start building out things, you'll see the properties for the items that you create. The first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to press the F key. We're going to draw out a frame. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do that again. So press the F key and I draw out a frame. And when I click this frame, you'll see all the properties over here on the right. You also see that the frame has been created over here on the left. When I look on the right hand side, I can see the properties for this frame, but more specifically, I want to see the X, the Y, the width, and the height. I can go ahead and I can set that frame to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to set this up for the iPhone 11 Pro to match my phone, and you'll see that it is set accordingly to those dimensions. I'm going to zoom out here just a bit. So I'm going to hold down the space bar to move around that frame. The first two things that you should know about Figma when you first begin to use it are over here. If I click on this menu, I can see this search. The way to access that menu is to hit Command/. So that acts like a launcher for the application. So if I say command forward slash, and I can type things in and they will become available to me. So if I say nudge, right, I can choose my nudge amount. So let's try that one more time, except this time I'm going to look for my keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to hit command forward slash, type in keyboard, and I can see now that I have my keyboard shortcuts demonstrated here for me. Here are the essential ones, so show hide UI. As I press it, you see the keyboard shortcut get activated. Pick a color, Control C, right? So I can pick a color. As well as search, that command forward slash action. As you look through all these various options, you can see the tools that are available to you, as well as the keyboard shortcuts that will enable you to access them much faster. Whenever I demonstrate Figma to my students, this is the first two features that I show them as I begin to walk them through the demos that I provide for them. Now that we have that out of the way, you see here that I have this frame. If I want to create another frame, I can hit Command C and Command V, and it'll create an additional frame. So if I want to continue making those frames, I can hit Command D, right? And it'll make a bunch more frames. This will come in handy in just a little bit as we begin to set the stage for the students. One of the key features of Figma that I like to bring up is its ability to organize things on the page. So I'm going to take this frame, I have another frame, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strewn them about, right? I'm going to move them all over the place. I'm going to select them all. One of Figma's powers is its ability to organize and place objects and get them back in this space. So I'm going to move over here. You see this little icon. You can also pay attention to it up here. I'm going to organize these, and now I can actually change the spacing of them. I can bring them a little bit closer. So if I click on this frame right here and I change its background property, I can once again select all of my objects and I can move them and rearrange them as I see fit. I'll show you that one more time. So I'm back down to my one frame. I just removed those others by hitting the delete key. Here's my first frame. I'm going to option drag this over, right? And you can see that it's showing the distance that I created those two frames. And now I'm going to hit Command D, Command D, Command D. This is a duplicate function that is very similar to the one that's in Illustrator. So I'm going to move these frames about. Okay, so I'm just moving these objects about. I also want to draw your attention over here to the left-hand side. You see frame 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to select them all together again. I'm going to click here, and I can organize them. Then this gives me the ability to rearrange them. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is going to remove some of these excess frames, and we're going to largely just focus on this one frame that I have here. If you look up here, you'll see a number of different options to kind of create additional frames, shapes, work with the vector pen tool, add text, as well as the hand tool to move around the window. So what I'm going to do is create a simple piece of text here, just so you can begin to see how that works. I'm going to put in my name, Miguel Cardona. Now, as I add these elements into the frame, you'll notice over here in the layers panel, the frame with my name immediately under it. My name is now part of this frame. If I drag this off, you'll see that my name is no longer part of the frame. So nesting elements and moving them into the frames, this whole hierarchy is really important in Figma. So in order to edit this a little bit, I'm going to select this object. I'm going to come over here to the right, and I'm going to change the font to Inter. Now, the fonts that are being used in Figma are the same fonts that you may have available in Google Fonts. If you want to use fonts from your desktop, there's a utility that you can add on, or you can use the Figma desktop app. So what I'm going to do here is choose black. I'm going to make my text larger. Let's set that at, let's say, 32. And I'm going to set my line height to 36. I can change the color here. I'm primarily doing this just so you can see how the properties affect that given object. Now, if I wanted to create a simple shape, I can go ahead, I can create the shape, I can change colors, I can change the properties of the shape right here. So let's say if I wanted to give it a very specific width, a very specific height, I can affect that here, as well as position it in the center of the document. So up here, I have these items that are going to help me align it within that page as well. Okay, so there are other shapes that you can create, such as polygons. And here I can begin to edit the number of polygons that are available. And even give them rounded corners. Okay, so one more concept that I do want to begin to cover is that one of the things that makes Figma unique is its ability to create reusable components. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a shape. I'm going to do this outside of the artboard. And I'm going to create a bit of text that's going to go inside of the shape. I'm just going to title this button. So the text and the shape, what I'm going to do is create something that is fundamentally reusable. I'm going to select my shape here and give this some rounded corners. So let's say I'm going to have that be a value of 12. This text, what I'm going to do is first off, I'm going to make sure that my snapping is turned on. So I turn snap to objects, and I'm going to turn on the snap to the pixel grid. This is going to make it much easier for me to work with these shapes. I'm going to have this button, right? I'm going to take this text field, I'm going to expand it from top to bottom. Now I'm going to come over here, and you're going to see these various options for working with type. So I can actually have that type aligned to middle. So as I make that taller, you can see it works that way. Okay, so at any point, if you ever feel confused, look over here on your layers and you'll see, okay, there's my button type, there's my graphic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these together. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a component. Another way to do this is I can select this and go up here and create a component. So once I have a component, this is a master component. So I can make adjustments and changes to this one. However, if I have an instance of that component, the instance is going to be a little bit different. So if we take a look over here on the left, I'll see that this is an instance and this is the main piece. Now, the point of this is to have an element that's fundamentally reusable. So this will go into my layout and I can have several of these buttons, and they're going to be basically controlled by this master component. So I can actually go ahead, click on one of these instances and change the text. So this can be, button 1. Now, if I'm unhappy with the way that these are behaving, 2, and button 3. If I'm not exactly happy with the way that they're behaving, I can come over here and begin to make changes on my main component, and you'll notice that that begins to affect these instances as well. So as I'm making these changes, these are then updating. So I can actually come in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Command key, and if we look over here on the layers panel, you'll see that I selected the rectangle inside of this component right here, component 2. So I can go ahead and change that color. I can command click on the text, and I can change that color to white. Notice how it doesn't impact the original component, and I can still kind of control those. This is the main concept that we'll be working through when I begin to move through the demo. Next, I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to navigate over to figma.com/@miggI. I'm going to go down to the auto layout breakers example, and I'm going to duplicate this to my drafts. So let me close out these other windows. So this is the file that we're largely going to be focused on. As you look through, I'm identifying how this file is to be created. So there's a number of different steps here for creating the first day profile cards. So what I'll do is first I'll share this document with my students. I'm going to go ahead and click share, and here what I can do is begin to change the share settings that I have available. I can choose people invited to this file or anyone with the link, and then I can say can view or can edit. By making it so that anyone with the link can edit, and what that will do is it'll make this file available when I share this URL, so I can open this up in a new window, and if I had an account, I can log into this file and make edits, and I can even wave to myself. See, there I am. So this file is now editable by other people. This makes it much easier to share with your students. You can invite them to the file, they can get into the file, and they can now make edits. So what I do here is I actually have a number of different pages. So I have the instructions, I have the examples, and I have the main components that I'm already using. These are the reusable elements. I have made these to be used alongside the notion of auto layout, which we'll cover in just a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the instructions, and what I'm going to do is actually create a new page, and then I'm going to call this the Week 1 Lab. This will be the primary area where you will be working with your students. So what I would recommend is that you go through this example once as the professor and then open up the opportunity for students to work on it as well. So what we'll be doing is covering these basic steps. We're going to start by making a frame. We're going to create a layout grid. This is optional, but the reason that I'm creating it is also a point of layout understanding that I want to impart onto my students. And what we're going to do is we're going to start using these existing components that already exist as part of this file. So I'm going to jump back to Week 1 Lab. I'm going to create my frame. So I'm going to draw out the frame. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to put my name in it, so Miguel Cardona. I'm going to select this, go and choose the iPhone 11 layout. You'll see that that width is 375 by 812. And if you go over to the assets, you'll notice that there's already a number of components there existing. Now, for the first day, I don't expect the students to be fully aware of Figma. I don't expect them to be making their own components yet. So I like having these existing components to begin to guide them. I don't want them building this from scratch. I want them to focus more on the activity. So I'm going to begin by dropping in the profile header. So I can drop it into this space and it'll line up. I can drop in other elements as well, such as the first name and last. So I'm just going to drop these two components in here so we can begin to see how they play out. So I put them in here together. And because these are instances, they're editable. So I can go in and I can type in Miguel Cardona. I can also drop in the bio component as well. Now, alone these will work, but you also notice, okay, we need to work a little bit on our spacing. So I'm going to just say here, biography, and I'll say I went to school at RIT. I worked in San Francisco, and I now live in Rochester. So these components are created such that they will expand upon each other. Now, what I'm going to do, if I go to my layers, I will see that each of these components are all now part of Miguel. So if I hide that, I can place that again. I can see this here. I can also click in. So if you command click, it makes it much easier. So I can command click onto this rectangle and I can change its color. I can command click onto this background and I can change its color. I can command click onto this type and I can change the properties of that type. So I can change this from roboto to inter, from roboto black to thin. Okay, so what I want you to do is show these students that these components are global and there is some wiggle room. However, we do want them all to at least have this kind of sense of the systems mindset, right? These components are being driven by this kind of global point. And yeah, you can make some edits, but they're fundamentally kind of pre-created. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create an auto layout. Now, what an auto layout does, it gives you the ability to automatically organize elements in the space. So if I were to have a number of rectangles here, I can go ahead and select them all. And as I'm working, so to work with auto layout, I can have another frame. I can have a number of different rectangles in that frame. I can select that frame and set it as auto layout. Now what auto layout will do, it's very similar to what we were doing before with the frames. What it does is it gives me the ability to have the elements kind of constantly be reacting to each other. So right now this is a vertical layout, but I can change it to a horizontal layout. When it's in a horizontal layout, I can move these about. As I increase the width of one of those elements, the other elements begin to respond and react. I'll show that one more time. So I'm going to create a frame, and I'm going to draw a few elements in that frame. So let's say 1, 2, 3. Because they're inside of here, when I select this to choose as auto layout, we can see that it's a vertical layout. I can begin to set how my elements are kind of working within that layout. I can choose that layout to be an auto width or a fixed width. I can increase the heights, kind of the padding on the top and the bottom, as well as the spacing in between. So now when I begin to change this element, as it expands, the other elements will follow. This is going to be crucial to making this layout work and automatically flow to the elements that we're going to add to it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my whole frame. I'm going to choose auto layout. I'm going to set this to be vertical. Now you'll notice that the content is kind of stuck to the bottom here. I can go back to my assets and I'm going to add in a few more elements. So let's say add in within here the favorite something with an answer. So I have 1, 2, 3. Now, if I want a little bit more space at the bottom, I have a little spacer. So I can drop the spacer down here at the bottom. I can have all of my elements kind of censored within this space. So if I hit the Command Y key, I can actually see the kind of layout of how everything is put together. So we start to have at least the beginning of our components here. I can go back to my frame, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the spacing in between items. I'm also going to select my frame and increase the border radius, let's say about 40. So here I have my profile card. I have some of the text. So like, let's say, what is my, favorite video game? I can come here and I can say Animal Crossing. But now, because this component uses the auto layout and can expand to fill the space, I can add more content by Nintendo. And I can keep adding text and text and text and text, and it'll begin to kind of fill the space. And that's the magic of the auto layout. So I can say favorite video game, Animal Crossing. So right now I am the professor and I have this file and the students are invited to this file. So if I have, like, let's say a new window, right? Let's imagine that I'm the student in the page. I basically have two instances of myself in this file. As students pile on into the page, you will be able to see them in here. And just a reminder, you can have up to 50 people in this page. So we've covered some of the main aspects. So let's give that another quick run through. I'm going to create a frame. I'm going to set the frame to iPhone 11. I'm going to go to my assets. I'm going to drop in a header. Oops, the header didn't make it too far. So this is actually a good point. Right now my frame, here it is. You can see my profile header. It's actually off to the side here. If I click that frame and unclip the content, I can actually see it. So I can click that frame and reclip that content. So that means that if I kind of move it off frame, you don't see it. By selecting that frame and choosing clip content on and off, you can see the content within that frame according to its boundaries. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab my name, I'm going to grab my bio, I'm going to grab one answer, I'm going to grab two answers, and I'm going to grab a spacer. So now when I go to the frame, I'm going to choose auto layout and they're automatically set up. Now here I can begin to change this spacing right here. If I want to, I can Command C, Command V, and I have another answer. Even if I want to, I can Command C, Command V, and when I have this element, I can actually push it down by pressing the down key. So I now have kind of like the basic bones of that profile card. Next, what I want to do is begin to think about, well, how am I going to incorporate imagery into this space? So as students are working on this, they're going to want to add an image to this background, an image here, and then images to kind of represent each of their kind of favorite things, right? They're going to customize this space. I'm going to show you the easy way to begin to incorporate images and work with images while working in Figma. So I'm going to grab a photo of myself that I have online. Let's see. So this is actually a rather large photo. So I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot. So Command, Control, Shift 4. I took a screenshot of myself. I'm going to Command click on that frame and hit Command V. It's going to paste my photo right into that space. Now, there's many different ways to get the images into Figma. You can go to File, Place Image, or you can also paste the image in. So what I'm going to do for the background, I'm going to Command click on the background. I'm going to go File, Place Image, and I'm going to choose from my desktop. I have a burger photo. I'm going to click, right? See, I have this burger photo. I could click on that background and it applies it to that background there. Now, for the students, I usually, they might not have imagery that they want to work immediately on them. So I highly recommend going to unsplash.com. Unsplash has a number of free to use photos that you can easily work with. I'm going to go ahead and type in textures and patterns, and I'm going to look at this image right here, and I'm going to just go ahead and, for the sake of time, make a screenshot and paste that in by command clicking onto that shape. Once again, when I command click onto that shape, and I'm going to paste it. So I did a number of things here, and I think it's important to highlight to the students the way that these images are working. When I command click on this shape, the photo comes into the shape as a fill. So right here I can see that it's filled in. There's different ways that you can apply the photo to this shape. So I can apply a fit, or I can even apply a crop. So in crop mode, I can actually expand and move that photo around that space as I see fit. So I'm holding down the Shift key, right? If I don't hold on the Shift key, it won't come out so well. I'm going to hold down that Shift key. I'm going to place the photo as I find appropriate, as I deem fit, and as I'm happy with. Same thing for the background. I'm going to command click on the background, and you'll see that the fill is this image. And I can begin to make some adjustments and changes to that graphic. Let's say I want to make it a little bit more bright and saturated. I can click on this background. I'm going to add the border radius, and now I can begin to change other things. I can go ahead, I'm going to double click, so I'm going to command double click Professor Cardona. I could put biography, and I can also add in images for all of these answers here. So I can select my frame, I can change that background color, let's say if I want to go dark mode, and now for each of these text points right here, I'm holding down the Shift and Command key to multiple select. I can set my text to white. So even here with these prompts, I can Shift Command click and set those to white. Now I can begin to answer out some of my questions. So I can say my favorite game is Animal Crossing. I can type in Animal Crossing photo, and I'll get a photo of Isabel. We copy the image, and I can command click onto that photo and paste it there. So once you do a quick run through of the complete demo, the students are in the document. You don't want them to begin working just yet. You want them to watch the demo as you perform it. Once you start to kind of create the space for them, and they're going to be in here, there is the potential for chaos, right? They don't really know what to do. They're in here for the first time. So what I recommend doing is at least get a head count of the students that you have. Go ahead, create a new frame, set that frame as iPhone 11, and for as many students as you have, create frames for them to work. So give them some space to work and then have them claim that space. So if you have like 15 students, I'll go 1, 2, right? Command D, 3, 4, 5. I will then select these and I will move them down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Command D. Remember that if you want to select these and rearrange that space, you can do so with that auto arrangement. Typically, what I like to do is I'll separate the space for them to work. Now, for this workshop, I was hoping to actually engage in the workshop with you all so we can work in this document live. However, that's unfortunately not going to be the case. So what I would recommend is you set up this space and let the students kind of begin to name and kind of claim their frames as they begin to work. And then I highly encourage you to kind of walk along this as well. There's going to be instances where students are going to have questions, and what you're going to do is just take the ability to kind of move around and watch them work and watch the profile grow and kind of expand in that space. Remember to lean on the instructions that I have here. So the instructions, create a frame. Like I said, the layout grid, there's a lot I can get into that. Feel free to reach out if you would like some more information using the layout grid. You can also check out my layout grid community file that I have available. But create a frame, drag the component, add the elements, rename the frame, set the frame to auto layout, space out the auto layout, begin to customize the text, the elements that there are, add imagery, and even here, there's kind of an explanation on how that works. So I have the custom images, the change typeface, the custom image into the pasted shape, and the spacers. Right? The spacer is right there. As that spacer increases, so does the height of that. So even here, if you're remembering, if you want to rearrange or work through those frames, I have that kind of explanation right there. So I do have examples of just some general kind of faked profiles that you can see here. So when you're working with students, make them aware of the additional pages if they are looking for help. Encourage them to help each other as they begin to develop their profiles. So lastly, what I do want to show you is that once your class is set up and everybody has their allotted cards, everybody is kind of happy with that. What I would do is also encourage people to leave comments on one another. The commenting feature is located up here. When you click on the comment feature, they can click and they can leave things. So, hey, how did you do that? And you can even at the person who is in the file. So you can say, hey, how did you do that? And I can give them access, and it is now there. So I gave access to another version of myself. So if they want to communicate, they can do that. The way that students will communicate in here, they're going to find their own organic ways of kind of like working things out. So what I would do is encourage you to, like let that kind of take place. Be mindful that people are being respectful of each other, and just look out for any type of harassment. But typically in the academic setting, that won't be that much of an issue. But just make sure that any kind of jokes that are being had are being made in a positive light. So all of the components I have here. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and begin to change some of those defaults, that's something you can do. Lastly, what I wanted to show you was from this example, you can generate for yourself a file that you can kind of have as a way of learning your students' names. I will typically have in any given semester anywhere from 60 to 80 students total across my classes, so I try to be better at knowing everyone's names. This gives me the opportunity to create a cheat sheet for names. So what I do is, let me just go ahead, I'm going to delete that line. I'm going to go right here, File, Export Frames to PDF. Now, what this is going to do is give me a PDF that will have all of these cards inside of them. This is a PDF that I'll put in my phone, and because it's already phone size, it'll be easy browsing. So I've fundamentally created a little card sort for my students so I can get to know their names a little bit better and kind of have a much more of a visual association of who they are and a bit of their personality. One of the best parts of this is that at a glance you can get a much better sense of some of the students' design sensibilities and the way that they may how much they may actually know about Figma or comfortable they are with design programs. So it gives you a quick at a glance, you get a sense of who they are and how they're representing themselves. And they also will surprise you in terms of how they begin to help each other out and kind of figure out things and do things that are a little bit more different and experimental. So back to my first page here. There's still a lot that is kind of left to be desired. Remember, just kind of look at all the different elements. You can begin to kind of change them up. You can make it more yours. You can have fun with this. It should be a little bit more about expression. My recommendation too is kind of give them prompts on what they should be identifying here. So I kind of try to keep this as general as possible as my example, so then that way others can generate their own components that they wish. So it might not be favorite something or favorite game, but it could be something a little bit more specific or cater to the course that you're working on. So if you want to take a look at this and other files that I have available on my community page, go to figma.com/@miggi. That's @miggy. Remember to help students and encourage them to help others when performing any kind of remote activity. Make sure that you export the cards so then that way you can get the students, you can know your students better, build a community and engage with those students visually, right? It's one of the key benefits for doing this. Also consider running a class across different pages. We worked all within the same page, but in the same way that students can claim a frame, they can also claim a different page. If you're unfamiliar, learn with your students and embrace collaboration. It's an opportunity to work together, to be open about design. If there's something that you're unaware of, the students are going to be quick learners with this application. They'd be happy to show you. The benefit of Figma is that collaboration, so embrace that spirit. If you are new to the application, just be upfront with your students hey, I'm new at this too. Let's work on this together. Figma has recently put out these new resources. So figma.com/resources/learn design, where there are a number of different design exercises. It's a really good learning tool for learning design. Also, check out the Figma YouTube for additional help and understanding about concepts like the auto layout and components. Thank you very much. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter @Miggy, @MIGGI, on Instagram @InstaMiggy. You can also email me at miguel.cardona@rat.edu. Thank you very much. Please take care. I hope everybody is doing well. Good night.